Good evening. I'd like to call to order the continuation of the Special Planning Commission meeting to address the Plan Ascension 2010 Master Plan Workshop. I think most people will remember we were going through the items on the agenda for each one of the tasks in the master plan, and we ended the meeting after item number 7. So what I'm going to ask Mr. Winston to do is pick up on item number 8, kind of go through the following 3 items on the agenda, and then commissioners will be able to comment, and then we'll open up the floor for public comment on those 3, and then we'll go through decisions, directions on each of the items on the agenda for Mr. Winston to go forward for the next public hearing. So at this time, unless, Ricky, do you want to have any comment before Mr. Okay. All right. I'll turn the floor over to Jeff Winston.
Okay. Can everybody hear me if I speak this way? Okay. Thanks. Item number 8 is a mixture of housing types, and I'll try and be very brief because we want to hear public comment. One of the things we presented a couple of meetings ago is the fact that one characteristic of the parish is a wide variety of lot sizes and, frankly, unit types. And so we have within the parish apartment buildings, we have mobile homes, we have single-family large estate lots, we have townhomes, we have a variety of things. And so the master plan picks up on that and reinforces that as a pattern that exists and is to continue. The other thing we'll point out is that on the current zoning map, there is a dark maroon color here called mixed-use corridors, and we're basically building on that concept, which is already in the zoning that's been in place for 7 years, and that allows and encourages a variety of unit types in those particular areas. The other one that's over there is commercial centers. Crossroads Commercial, it's called today. It's been around again for 7 years. It encourages a variety of housing types as well. So we are basically building on that concept, and the underlying value here is that within the parish there are a wide variety of family types. There are large families, there are singles and couples, retirees, there are people who are clerks and firemen and policemen, and we have people with large estates and all kinds of varieties. So the idea is that we try to be as self-sufficient as we can with regard to housing. A fairly significant portion of the traffic problems that beset us are, in fact, related to the people commuting into the parish from elsewhere. And part of that, as we've heard from a variety of people, is the inability in some of the housing markets to find suitable or appropriate housing for them. And so the idea is to try and expand on that so that we can capture more of those folks as residents rather than commuters. Item number 9 is the implementation section, and implementation of this plan will happen in a variety of ways. First of all, the primary impact of a comprehensive plan such as this is it doesn't really affect existing land uses, existing zoning. Existing zoning is in place. Somebody walks in tomorrow and wants to develop their land per that existing zoning. It's pretty tough not to let them go ahead and do that. That's something that's been recognized in the parish for a long time. However, when land use changes are proposed, in other words, a zoning change is proposed, then one consults the comprehensive plan to see what the long-term vision for the parish is, and that affects rezoning kinds of decisions. So one of the implementation items would be eventually, as people individually want to rezone their properties, the comprehensive plan would affect and help guide those decisions. A second part of the implementation is that we intend to have sub-area planning. We have established very broad outlines in this plan. We've looked at the whole parish, and the parish as a whole, in fact. And we recognize that there are many differences within the sub-areas. We know Saint Amand is different than Prairieville. And so the idea is to come back, having established a very broad envelope, and look specifically in the Saint Amand area, for example, or Geismar, or Prairieville, or some of the other sub-areas, and have additional public meetings and input, and take the broad concepts established here and then customize those to the needs of that particular neighborhood and community. So there would be a much more specific kind of thought process, planning process, that would go on within each neighborhood, and we hope that we would be able to pick up some of the individual ideas and objectives that maybe get lost at this 10,000 foot elevation view. As you come down in elevation and begin to look a little more closely, we can be more responsive to what individual communities want to do. Finally, there is a general discussion about implementation, financial, fiscal implications of the plan. And quite frankly, the majority of the fiscal implications, impacts, are irregardless of the plan. Okay, a big fiscal impact is going to be the regional sewer system. That is in the works. The planning has gone on. The planning is getting more and more refined. There are significant grants being provided by a variety of local and federal agencies. We have DEQ has been involved, and at least the information we gather from DEQ is that implementation of that is pretty critical to continued growth and development in Ascension Parish. We know that roads are a big issue. Many of the roads in the parish that are problematic are state roads, and so there's a challenge. We know that there are also a very significant number of parish roads, and we're falling behind. We're not able to maintain those roads as we're probably maintaining 30% of the roads each year that we would normally need in order to keep up, and then that's just catching up and not keeping up. So we have some significant road problems. Again, the majority of those road problems are irregardless of whether the plan's adopted or not. So those expenses that are associated with road improvements, we have, as we talked about in previous meetings, a very significant number of roads that do not meet parish standards. And so there's a lot of roads that need to be upgraded, made safe, and then widened for traffic. And the traffic, a significant amount of traffic, again, is coming whether or not. What the plan tends to do is make the development of the roads a little more cost effective by targeting areas and keeping other areas at the current lower densities that are there today even. And we think that by having a few areas where there is some concentrations of future growth, we can focus the road improvements in those areas, and that won't be an impact on the entire parish. As you all know, the cost of not doing that means that cost is spread over the entire parish, and everybody who owns property in the parish ends up subsidizing those road improvements. Let's see, the final item is flood zone and floodways. And we have identified that parish has maps that identify the flood plain. We do not have adequate data to define the floodway, which is the area in which current flows through the flood areas, and that there's a specific legal definition for a floodway, and restrictions, federal restrictions that apply, and that are implemented through local development ordinances. So that would be an implementation item that'll happen over the next X number of years that to further define what floodways are versus floodplains. And we've identified a number of areas that look to us to have, based on the federal FEMA mapping, we've identified those on the master plan. And so that will impact the development that goes on in those areas, primarily because of the requirements to mitigate. That is, that if you're going to fill an area, you have to either excavate an area or your alternative is to elevate buildings out of the floodplain so that they don't raise the flood on neighboring properties. So all of those things are pretty much, as proposed in the master plan, are really an enforcement and implementation of the guidelines and regulations that are on the books today. And Ricky, is there anything else that I should hit? So.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Any questions, comments by commissioners? This time on any, I guess we can go back all the way up to number 2 and down if you have any questions.
I'd like to hear what the public has to say. It's,
Okay. No commissioners have questions at this time. Go ahead and open public comment period. If you want to make a comment, please fill out a public comment card. And we'll call on you, and you have 3 minutes to speak. That's more. All right. You want to go first, Al?
He's up.
Well, yeah. All right. First, Bill Keeley.
Good evening. My name's Bill Keeley. I live in Gonzales. I want to, I guess for the last time, say what I think we've been saying at every one of these meetings. I think we're hearing the same comments. The commission's hearing the same thing over and over. And I understand these are aired publicly throughout the week, throughout the future weeks. And I'm hearing friends and family telling me, Bill, I saw you on TV, I saw your comments. But I want to say initially for my first minute that if you're watching this and you haven't attended and you haven't participated, come participate. The comments I'm hearing from those in attendance is, I oppose it. I don't oppose it. I support this plan. But we're seeing the same faces. And I don't think we're really getting a good representation of this parish and the surrounding communities at these hearings for you to make an intelligent and informed decision. I'm going to say my only comment is without a plan, we can't ensure our future. I'm going to use 2 examples, Hurricane Katrina and the Gulf oil spill. There were opportunities to enact a plan that would have prevented catastrophic events. Because of that inaction, you can point fingers. It doesn't matter who's to blame. But in the end, there was inaction. And I support this plan because I see it as a vision, as a plan for our future. Now, yeah, we're not talking about another hurricane. If we don't enact this plan, there's going to be a hurricane or there's going to be an oil spill. But there are events that could occur that could be irreversible. We're going to look down the road in 25 years and say, gee, we had an opportunity back then to do something about this. And, I want to encourage the board or the commission and everyone in attendance here and everyone watching it on TV that if you have children, grandchildren, if you have family that's younger than you that's going to be living here in the future and you want a better life for them and you want a better environment, better roads, better infrastructure. Now's the time. Let's not be sitting here 25 years from now saying, gee, we could have done something about this. You know, we could have built up the levees, 10, 15 years ago prior to Katrina. There was an opportunity. The oil spill. We all know, politics aside, that some people that had the power to make decisions could have made better decisions and prevented what's out there right now. Now we're doing it retroactively. So let's do it now.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Peterson.
Good evening. I'll make my comment general, maybe then a specific item. I just want to voice my opposition to this plan. There perhaps are one or two things that are needed. I'm not that familiar with our flooding situation. I mean, I'm affected by it. I don't know how to solve it. Perhaps there's no real solution yet in this plan, but maybe there will be. That would be a good thing. But as opposed to correcting issues such as we've seen with Katrina and the oil spill, wherein government has failed to have a plan, and any plan there was, government has failed to implement that plan. I just see this as a fundamental change in the character of Ascension Parish without the support of the people of Ascension Parish. I hear that, we want to create small urban centers to reduce traffic, the concept being people would live close to where they work. This is not Europe. It's America. We live in one place, we work in another place. We change jobs frequently, for the most part, and many people change their place of residence frequently. To think that we're going to, mid-afternoon, go down to our local market on foot and buy a loaf of bread and some vegetables and come back and cook our supper like they do in France, it is not America. We go to a superstore a couple times a week, come home, put the stuff in our freezer and refrigerator, and we go to the softball game instead of spending 4 hours cooking supper. The American lifestyle is really not supported by this plan. It's a European lifestyle. And I just beg the Commission, if we go forward with this plan, allow the people of Ascension Parish to have a say. Please have this on a referendum so everyone can vote, because otherwise we'll have a bunch of very disappointed people. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Ellen Russian.
My name is Ellen Russian. I reside in the Galvez area. Once again, I've plowed over this document, and my views have not changed at all. There is still a great need of Ascension Parish citizens to come to these meetings, to make phone calls in opposition to this plan. The biggest problem with this plan is that it forever changes Ascension Parish as it is today. This parish did not get the way it is because of our government. This parish is the way it is because of the people who settled here, who built it, and who have maintained it. Our government is to be on our side, not to be in the mode of destroying us, and this plan forever changes our area. We go from 8 units to 15 units of dwellings. That is not what the people here want. That is not the type of density that has attracted people to our area. People do not want to live in that kind of setting, and that is why they have flocked to our area and will continue to flock to our area, because they feel protected here. It is a lifestyle and a character that they want to maintain, and the master plan does not do that. We have serious problems with our roadways, our sewer. Our present plan we have in place is 39 pages. Seems odd to me that we need to go to a 130-page document to fix things. We need to focus on our roads. We need to do something about our sewer. There are plenty of housing levels here. I cannot imagine that people would truly have a hard time finding a place to live. There are new places along Airline Highway, that a large number that are still available. There are subdivisions everywhere all over our parish that have empty houses. There are apartment complexes throughout the parish that have openings. This plan is truly about an agenda to change this area. It does not have the people's best interest
Okay.
at
Time.
heart. Thank you.
Margaret Lee.
Good evening, Commissioners. I want to say that I appreciate and thank each of the Commissioners for being a volunteer citizen on this commission and this committee, because you are the only volunteer citizen committee. From what I understand, most of the committees here in the parish are council member-only committees. So we appreciate your volunteer efforts as citizens. As a grant writer, my research shows that this parish is in its peak 5 years after Katrina with the population. I also believe that some of the statistics that we're using are very, very much out of date, including if you will look at the request for qualifications for the consultant. The documents they're using are very outdated on statistics. They use the census of 2000. We have census numbers, we have fact sheets, we're fixing to go into another census. I've got some papers here from the existing document that shows statistics, and what we have is some pretty low numbers, some pretty inaccurate numbers. We are showing that we don't even have 100,000 people.
Can you turn it? Okay, good.
2000, 2010. This shows population and households. I just would request that y'all look at the numbers, do some traffic management studies. When a study is done by the parish, they go study for 1 day the traffic that was done on a roadway. I have other statistics from the existing plan and the current future proposed plan that also show single-family residences, how many that would be increased in a 10-year period. So numbers are very important when we're studying for growth here. So what I asked you to do is really get the numbers of what's going on right now in our parish. Ascension Parish population, again, 2,000. And I saw this through the documents for the master plan, this current master plan. This is one that shows a pie chart of how we are growing in Donaldsonville, Gonzales, and Sorrento. And I'm going to give you another chart that the parish did. I think it was when Ronnie Hughes was here, and it talks about the volumes and the increase on LA 73 and some of our biggest roads. Do we know actually what our traffic is on these roads right now? I'm going to also show you, because I'm a sandbagger, I know what it is to flood in your neighborhood.
Okay, yeah. About 15 seconds, okay.
Okay. I also I'm speaking on behalf of another person, too, if you would allow me just a little bit more time.
You can't get somebody else's name. You just have to 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to show you then what's going on with the existing roadways right here. This is Tiggy Duplessis Road. This is right at the stop sign, right at 621. This is the roads, what they look like. We would like to have things fixed before you go into more development. We have houses down on Duplessis Road. They're not selling the $250,000 houses, so they're putting up $140,000 houses.
Thank you.
And I really need you to look at the Duplessis roadway as well because of the drainage that the parish continues to have to pay for because of development. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert Duplessis.
How you doing? I'm Bert Duplessis. I've lived here for all my life, which is almost 47 years. My family goes back in this parish in the mid-1850s, mid-1800s. One thing that this parish has always been about is family, and families are probably the backbone of this parish. Big families. We have big families here. And I agree with last meeting, Mike Marshaw read about the guy that sent the letter. And I think this is a very important issue. And before this plan is implemented, I think that the parish needs to let every person in this parish vote on this issue, because it is going to affect every person in this parish. And they should have a say-so. Each voter in this parish, they should have a say-so in what goes on with this master plan. And if they accept it, let's accept it. If they reject it, let's reject it. And let's be fair to every person in this parish. And that's basically all I'm asking before you implement this plan, to get it out to people. I realize, and just like this gentleman said, I agree with him, that people need to hear what's in this plan. And it's hard to get people to do it, but I think each councilman needs to go to his district and try and get together. If you got to knock doors, whatever he has to do to get his people to where they see what's going on. And I compliment these two councilmen, because since I've been coming to these meetings, they've been to all of the meetings. And I think that's what needs to happen, is to let the people of the parish decide and see if they want this plan, or let them reject it. It's up to the people of the parish. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Craig Russian.
Hello, I'm Craig Russian. I live in Galvez. I'm, of course, certainly opposed to this plan. This plan is a radical change from our existing plan, our existing zoning. Really, it's the biggest attack that occurs with this zoning is the density changes. We go from 1, 2, and 3 units per acre for the whole parish as we are presently zoned, and we change to 10 units per acre being medium intensity, 15 units per acre in their centers, and suburban areas being defined as 4 units per acre, but that includes existing homes and roads and ditches. So really you end up with, you can have apartment complexes all over the north central part of the parish with this zoning. This plan has us subsidizing intense high-density centers. It calls for subsidizing, incentivizing, allocating sales taxes to, proposes new property taxes, new fees, prioritizing infrastructure expenditures, all for high-density urban zones that the people of this parish really don't even want in the first place. Really, there's a two-step approach here that's both highly negative. One, we lose our density protections in the north center of the parish. Two, in the south of the parish, we end up with such restrictions being put in place that people cannot develop their property at all by having high flood requirements, high septic requirements, high road requirements, excessive lot size requirements. The plan makes it almost impossible to develop in the south part of this parish. So it's a two-step approach that are very negative to the parish. Also, I don't think this plan's shown its justification hardly at all. There's a sentence in there about the family jewels of the parish, whatever that's specifically supposed to mean, and one sentence about property values. But there's no justification for why these changes need to be made. They're just stated as this the way it's going to be. And we certainly don't have, there's this big push in here for urbanizing the parish. There's nothing in here that assures the people of this parish that we won't have urban statistics as a result of this urbanizing plan. How are we going to feel assured we're not going to have urban school statistics, urban crime statistics?
Okay, got 15 seconds.
What's in this plan to assure us that this major push for urban growth is not going to give us urban character and urban statistics for our parish?
Okay. Thank you. Catherine Goppelt.
Good evening. If population increases in our parish, it should be from market forces, not driven by policies and regulations from the government. More government means less personal freedom. The concepts of the proposed master plan are unrealistic. Very few people walk to work. Senior citizens don't walk to the grocery store in the middle of the summer, and children don't play next to mosquito-infested bayous. But that's what this plan is. We do have a master plan in place now. It's not been followed. Urban living with high density is not what attracts people to the parish. A mixture of housing types with rental apartments, condominiums, and single-family dwellings is not a problem. Density is. And that's what this plan is about. Small urban centers with 10 to 15 homes per acre are not what the residents want. We have ordinances on the books now for those who want to develop and live in high-density areas. We call them planned unit developments, or PUDs. To date, this concept has brought more controversy for this commission and the parish than comfortable living. Your priority should be to make sure that what is in place now, Appendix 3 in our code, if anybody wants to look at it, it's on the internet, ascensionparish.net, is now 39 pages. If it is applied as it is, not replaced with the 130 pages you're proposing, we don't want to make the problems worse. The second guiding principle requires necessary infrastructure, water, sewer, and roads before encouraging growth. Both Ascension Parish officials that are elected and appointed have not applied the current plan in their individual decisions. It just hadn't been done. So we don't really know what would happen if we applied this plan. With the flood maps, there are more restrictions and regulations. Anyone developing in the flood zone will not haul dirt in. They will have to either build a pond or put their home on piers. We don't need more rules and regulations from the government. Soon the coastal zone will probably be applied, and then we'll have more permits. I'm concerned about one area of the document that hasn't been discussed, implementation. Final decisions right now are made by the council. The proposal requires an evaluation every 2 years for needed amendments by staff. Changes can be requested by citizens, property owners, or parish officials. Criteria for amendments includes when the community or area, as defined by the presiding body, will derive benefits. Minor changes, defined as editing, clarification, and slight changes that do not change the substance or intent, are also included. Major updates every 7 years, or, quote, as often as necessary. It is unclear with current wording whether these amendments will be approved by the Planning Commission, the Planning Department staff, or the Parish Council. This is really critical. Whether appointed or elected, officials can trample on individual property rights in this document. There's too much room for abuse. In order to implement the plan, the government must raise taxes. We do not need to pay another dollar of taxpayer money to out-of-state consultants with their cookie-cutter plans. We need to follow the plan we have, and we don't want this plan that is from the liberals in Washington. Thank you.
Ann Schoenfeld.
Hi, I've lived in this parish for 10 years, so, of course, by all means, I'm a newcomer, even though I've lived in Louisiana my entire life. And I do want to clarify something with this plan that I think has been a gross misunderstanding. The plan is something that we're trying to do in case we get this influx of people who are coming here anyway, whether we want them to or not, whether we invite them in or whatever we do, they're going to come if they choose to. So the plan is something to be put in place, is where are we going to put them? How are we going to handle it? How are we going to respond if 50,000 more people move out of New Orleans because another natural disaster happens? What are we going to do? It's a plan. It's not something that the parish is going to implement and build urban centers everywhere. We don't have the money, and the parish has no interest to do these things. Developers will only do these things if they see a profit. Developers will do these things if people want it. So if Prairieville wants a small town urban center, being maybe some corner shops, a little town square, something with charm and small town appeal, which is probably something we would go for, then developers will build it. You know, we're not, the urban centers that they're thinking of and the densities that everyone is fearing, it's not going to happen because, I'm sorry, it just boggles my mind to think that if we allow or we say that it's permitted in a particular area, that it's going to happen, and then it's going to happen everywhere, and the density is going to just overwhelm us all, and we're going to be taking away their farmland and changing everywhere the way of life. The parish isn't doing that. A developer will come in if people want to move here, and the developer is going to do it. This is our way of controlling it so that it doesn't get spread out everywhere and all of our land does not get gobbled up, and we can handle it if it comes. I guess that's really all I have to say. The plan, like I said, again, is a way of our handling these issues when they come up, and I believe it is a good one. And I do want more people, like everyone's saying, we do need to come to the meetings, and it is all the same people coming again. So please, out there, learn more about this and talk to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lou Goppelt.
Good evening. First, let me say thank you for the last meeting for having the courage. I think Mr. Dalton was the one that kind of led the motion to delete sections 20-42, 43, and 44 regarding affordable and HUD housing from the master plan. And be sure and check your minutes. It's not just deleting it from the agenda, it's deleting it from the master plan. That was what was voted on last month. I do have some concerns, though. Page 11 of this 130-page document states that is intended to follow-up sub-area planning effort, that a follow-up sub-area planning effort will interpret the general directions of the comprehensive plan to individual neighborhoods with input from residents. Your proposal is to pass the plan and then go to the people that will be affected and get their input? You're putting the cart before the horse. You pass the plan first, the die will be cast, and people will be forced to live with what you created. We need meetings on individual neighborhoods before the proposed plan is passed. Or, as Mr. Duplessis recommended, simply put the master plan up for a vote of the people, and then you know the people voted for it, and they've got 100% buy-in. Your proposal does not have community support, does not support community values of Ascension Parish. We really do not want our parish urbanized. That's what we've done by mandating minimum densities throughout the parish. Is it possible that one of the motivations, I'm not sure that it's, I don't think it's the commission here, I think one of the motivation of the staff and the parish administration is because we have to do something in the northern part of the parish for sewer to highly urbanize the northern part of the parish so that you have sufficient funds for the user fees. I don't know. I hope it's not the case. It seems to fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Robert.
Good evening. I want to open my comments with an interesting yet familiar commentary by Thomas Sowell, quoted in Intellectuals and Society, 2009. With experts, there is much empirical evidence of their biases. City planners are a typical example. Quote, planners often call for visioning sessions in which the public are consulted about their desires for their regions. In a typical visioning session, members of the public are asked leading questions about their preferences. Would you like to have more or less pollution? Would you like to spend more or less time commuting? Would you like to live in an ugly neighborhood or a pretty one? Planners interpret the answers as support for their preconceived notions, usually some form of smart growth. If you want less pollution, you must want less auto driving. If you want to spend less time getting to work, you must want a denser city so you live closer to work. If you want apple pie, you must oppose urban sprawl that might subdivide the apple orchard. Unquote. Wow! This is exactly the kind of public meetings held last year at DPW on Church Point Road concerning the proposal before you tonight. The comprehensive zoning plan before you was not written with real input from local residents. The process is flawed. Your minutes of June 15th, 2009 describe your role in this process. Quote, to make sure the voices of the parish, which is government, support committee, and Winston Associates are heard and things run smoothly, unquote. No mention of the people were made. This proposed plan will change our lives, our families, and our community forever. This plan is misleading. It mentions balancing property rights with public good on page 5. You say property rights will not be lost, but in your meeting minutes of September 21st, 2009, page 5, quote, you will determine where development should happen and where it should not happen, unquote. It can't be both ways. Property rights will be lost in implementing the plan as written. On page 11, it reads, existing zoning is not changed by the comprehensive plan. Mr. Winston said the same thing earlier. And then on page 12, it will be, quote, a constant part of every land use decision. He said at the beginning of the meeting, it's not going to do it, but if you want to make a change, then all of a sudden it is totally changed. We're not fools. New rules and regulations will be adopted, new designations and densities will be applied. Conservation becomes natural and changes from 1 house per acre to 1 house per 20 acres. Rural, which allows 2 homes per acre, will change to 1 house per 2 acres. Medium intensity residential increases from 3 houses per acre to 8 to 10 houses per acre. Zoning will change, and so will property values. Ascension Parish presently has substandard roads, inadequate fire protection, and no central sewer system. The single most destructive proposal in this plan is the encouragement of compact growth and high density. In our present master plan and in this one proposed here tonight, your own guiding principle is not to encourage growth with inadequate infrastructure. Citizens do not and will not support the current proposal because their concerns and ideas have not been heard. It is crucial that citizens become familiar with what is being proposed. This will affect every property owner.
Okay.
15 seconds. We've asked since April, and I
For you.
respectfully request again for you to hold public hearings in the evenings in our home districts to afford citizens adequate opportunity to give input and respond to the ideas put forth in the plan prior to any vote by the Commission on the whole plan, not after the plan is passed, and then you're going to come and talk to us about it. Please represent the people.
All right. Thank you. Phil McLaurin.
Good evening. My name is Phil McLaurin. I've lived here about 15 years. I just started watching this a couple months ago. I saw it on the TV late at night. I'm opposed to the high density. We need to fix the roads and the sewers before we start adding more people. It's terrible out here. Everybody's telling us that, just as man here at the beginning of the meeting said, we've only fixed 30% of the roads. And you want to add more people? Sewers and roads need to be fixed before we do anything else. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Clint Quintma.
Good evening. I just want to say, first of all, I am for a plan. We now already have a plan in the parish. We just don't follow it. To say we don't have a plan is a misstatement. Now, are we asking for this new plan because we don't follow the old plan? Well, if we don't have a sensible plan, we'll just have another plan we don't follow. And I think what we're asking as citizens and our concerns is we have a sensible plan so we do attack the issues that need to be solved. I just want to touch on the density. Something just occurred to me through all this process that today we'll sit here and approve PUDs in conservation and in rural areas. Keystone always comes to mind. But then we're going to turn around and say, well, we only want 2 acres in rural or 10 acres in conservation, when we're going to approve a PUD and put 1,000, 2,000 cars out on the roads in a specific area. The damage that PUD does immediately within a couple years is the same damage that regular development takes for 10, 15, 20, maybe even 25 years. That much damage is done that fast. And to say we're keeping the rural character by increasing our densities but then allowing PUDs in our conservation and our rural areas it just doesn't make sense, because we're not keeping the rural character if we allow that, and it just simply is not the case. I just want to touch on the data for the floodplain. The number one item needs to be that we compile the necessary data to make educated decisions within the floodplain. I don't think that this plan states that, nor is there a plan to take that data. Does it match up with the drainage program? Where is that data before we start talking about making educated decisions in the floodplain and improving floodplain development? It's just not in here. It's just not available. And for us to make decisions, the plan should have that as the number one item. This plan overall, in my opinion, is too much radical change too fast. I think if we slow down and we acquire the necessary data to solve the 3 most important problems of this parish: roads, drainage, and utilities. If we have the plan to attack those 3 problems, we're on the road to success. But it's just not in this document. It's just not in here. So I ask the Commission to take this plan and break it down and ask yourself in each part, how does it affect the everyday citizen of this parish? In what way? Because if you think about it in that way, you will come out that it is affected in a negative fashion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Roy Domain.
Thank you, and thank you for serving as you do. No doubt, a plan is needed. Any successful business, any successful endeavor always has a good plan to go forth. And as you're hearing, there's room for a lot of improvement. 3 areas that I'd like to see discussed, that I'm not seeing discussed, is one is impact fees. Throughout the document, it is written impact fees. It is put on schools. It is put on a situation if you need a park, if a development now has rules that it has to have a park in it, or if we don't put a park in it, you got to pay fees to pay for the park that might be adjacent in another area. Okay, it talks about adding additional fees, impact fees specifically for school, of course, transportation, fire hydrants, and they use other words in here such as exactions, concurrency requirements. Of course, here's the impact fees. Tax implement financing, stuff like this. So even in the document, there's an interesting line that reads under section, they got a lot of wording in here, pages 110 to 111, you'll find where it reads, talking about the growth and address the impacts on the roads, the infrastructure. It said, talked about impact fees. It says the impact fee is a negative in that it increases the cost of new housing. The positive is that it reduces the fiscal impact on the rest of the community. There are some legal hurdles to implying or putting impact fees on any resident in the state of Louisiana. And that will be a serious uphill battle because the people have to vote to receive that as a tax, not as a fee. Okay? The other issue that I want to address is the plan calls for some information that wants to be read in regard to affordable housing. It's in section 17-2043. It's called Incentivizing the Market. It says the private sector may not be able to address all the issues along or in a timely manner. Therefore, the parish will need to address the housing issues in a two-pronged manner, part incentive and part regulatory. The creation of a housing ladder will allow the market to add affordable alternatives to parish residences. However, the parish will need to take steps to monitor the progress and ensure that housing remains affordable over time. If it is found that housing affordability cannot be provided by the market alone, the parish will be in position to add programs and incentives to fill the gap. That's a very broad undertaking without much description, and I would like to see a lot of information put on that.
That's been revised a lot. So
Yeah, we've eliminated that.
Yeah.
That's been pulled completely.
17, 20, 42, 43, and 44 was eliminated at the last meeting.
Okay, and that one's in there. That one's coming out. Okay, well, thank you very much on that clarification. The other section I want to...
About 15 seconds.
The other one is on energy efficiency. Our parish is part of the building codes, which is followed by the state International Residential Code. In that book is Chapter 11, which specifically deals with energy efficiency. We, as a parish, follow that as a guide, and I submit that we're going to have a duplication of efforts trying to be implemented here, whereas we should follow the state building code and the parish code that we're already under. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Robert.
My name is Al Robert. I appreciate the time y'all put into this and the time that y'all allow us to speak. Mr. Duplessis said it. Clint said it. Ms. Kathleen Goplet said it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. We have a plan. Worked on a plan for many years. The problem is our council does not implement the plan. We found out weeks ago that our councilman, two of our councilmen, took our whole area and put it under a PUD. So if you develop property in this rural conservation area, it has to be a PUD, a planned unit development. Who knew about it? Nobody knew about it. So as I said at the last meeting, a lot of y'all time and effort is for naught. If we do not hold the council to what they're supposed to do, bypass the rules for certain individuals, it ruins the whole thing. We have a plan. We need to work with the plan we have, and we need to follow it. I encourage, as Mr. Duplessis said, and the first speaker said, people don't come out to these meetings. They're not coming out to these meetings because it doesn't affect them in their area. We didn't have public hearings. We had presentations. So we need the public hearings in the areas of each councilman so they can voice their opinion on these new regulations, which we don't need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that was the last card that I had. So, any questions, comments by commissioners? Of course, what we're going to need to do is give direction to Mr. Winston going forward to revise the plan. I think he's already started that process based on input to date, but we'll have to go one by one to make any other additional question. Now, Jeff, do you want to address some of the comments made? I think you can rebuttal. And then,
well, not rebuttal, but maybe clarification. We heard a number of comments about how different the plan is from the plan we have today. The comprehensive plan we have today is essentially a policy document. Doesn't have maps, doesn't have a lot of guidance, just policy directions. What we do have in the way of a plan is the zoning map, and I assume that's what most people are referring to. The plan, as it's proposed, really reinforces the zoning map. Okay, it is not as different as been portrayed here as different. Now, if we look at this plan here, which is the existing zoning plan, everything in blue is called medium intensity. or RM, residential medium intensity, and it's 3 units per acre. Within that plan, in that blue area, there are the yellow indications, which are called Crossroads Commercial. There are Crossroads Commercial in a few other areas. If you look at this plan, you'll see that the centers that are identified are almost identical to the Crossroads Commercial designations. Now, there are a couple. There's one here, there's one over here, one there, and in general, those are actually fewer than the ones that are on the current zoning plan. Now, the density that's in your current zoning map for Crossroads Commercial is 20 units per acre. Okay, we're proposing 14 units per acre. We're actually proposing a lower level of density in these centers, which are fewer in number but approximately the similar locations. There is another category here called mixed-use corridors that also allows relatively high density and a lot of commercial. What this plan suggests is that those areas, rather than happening an entire strip along the major roadways, they become clustered into even more tightly controlled centers. So we don't have another airline highway on Burnside, okay? So that we don't have another airline highway up on 42, so that we have actual open areas and then more dense clustered areas, so that there remains a rural character instead of strip development from one end of the corridor to the other. The area that is in blue here, that's called medium intensity, has a density of 3 units per acre according to the current zoning. The overall density proposed in this area is 4 units per acre, including the rural centers. Okay, so the intent is not to change the underlying approximately 3 units per acre, but to include, again, the same. It includes a calculation that there will be some of these more intense centers happening. Now, there is an area just on the north end of Gonzales that has a higher density. It is near what may be someday a transit center. It's close to services that are within Gonzales. It's an area where there already is extensive commercial development happening on Burnside and Airline Highway, and it seems like that's an area that that has the potential of absorbing, if there is a demand. Okay. The other comment that was made is that we're somehow inviting all of this growth. We are using current statistics. We are using statistics generated by several different entities, including the folks at LSU that do population projections for the state. And the purpose of these projections is to try and anticipate, not to invite. Okay? If we don't have a market demand, if the demand drops off for development, the development doesn't have to happen just because we're ready for it. Okay? It just means that we are prepared if it does happen, as I think Ms. Schoenfeld talked about. So the other thing that changes from between these two plans is the area that is blue, according to the regional sewer plan, is actually a little bit smaller than the blue area over here. So the boundary, and it happens primarily in this area, and it happens primarily over in this area, where this proposed regional sewer plan is not as extensive as the current medium intensity residential is. So this plan attempts to recognize that. The reason for that is that those areas are subject to 100-year floodplain, and in some cases they have significant areas of wetlands, and so to continue to represent them this way probably gives a false impression about the amount of development that's realistically going to happen there. So where the natural characteristics has been kept the same, and then there are other areas where wetlands and floodplains have been mapped, and obviously those need to be looked at in a little more detail on a case-by-case basis. So the plan as proposed is a modest, if any, change from the existing zoning plan. Okay, these centers are the same as the Crossroads commercial centers. These centers represent the Crossroads commercial centers that are designated. In fact, there are fewer of them. There are other Crossroads commercial centers that are not reflected over here. And that's not to say that these are absolutely fixed in stone. Okay? These are intended to reflect the idea that there will be centers. It depends on the property owner, the developer, and the marketplace as to whether these centers happen exactly in the places, and as many as we've shown. There may be, if there's a huge demand, then we'd have to come back and take a look at the plan and say, okay, should more centers happen? This is a guide for rezoning, okay? And I want to just reinforce that. Teresa Robert mentioned that there is a difference, okay? This is a vested right. This is zoning that has been granted. If someone wants to follow the zoning regulations, they can come in and do what is allowed by zoning. This is a guide for changes if they ever happen. Okay, so that the fact that this plan is here does not change the zoning here unless the zoning wants to change. And then the question is, how should we change it? Okay. Then you would go back and say, well, we've spent a lot of time trying to think comprehensively in the comprehensive plan, so this ought to be a general guide if we're going to change the zoning. Okay. Now, the notion here is that was mentioned also is we have had to look at this in a broad way as a comprehensive plan. That's normal. And now the next step, as proposed by the parish staff, is to come back in here and look at specific neighborhoods and say, okay, we've got a general picture here, but we've not zoomed in on the particular conditions in your area, in the Santa Monica area, for example. How should that happen? And should this happen exactly the way this shows? Should we modify it? This is a chance to fine-tune. Now, the reason you come back and revisit a comprehensive plan is because conditions do change, and they change sometimes rapidly, sometimes slowly. So the comprehensive plan ought to be somewhat flexible in the sense that you come back and you don't want to force something that is no longer reflecting the reality of the condition. We may find that there's a big demand for industrial development, and that this is one of the few places in the United States where industrial development can happen in a certain way. We may want to come back and increase the area designated. Then that would be appropriate reason to come back and revisit the comprehensive plan. Okay. One of the things that a comprehensive plan does do is create predictability. Okay. And you've all mentioned, a number of you have mentioned, that one of the challenges here is that we've had a plan, we've had a zoning plan. The problem with a PUD is that there's no advanced designation for PUDs. PUDs, by their very nature, are a creative or flexible departure from the underlying zoning. A comprehensive plan is a document that says this is where we really want, if you're going to have a PUD, which is higher density, for example, these are the areas we want it to happen. Okay, and not in these areas. So in a lot of ways, the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to encourage the council to follow the very principles that underlie the zoning plan. Okay, one of the reasons that PUDs are controversial is because they often appear out of nowhere, and there isn't anything that predicted where they would happen. The idea of having a comprehensive plan is to begin to predict where change should happen, where higher density, where lower density, where no change should happen, where some other kinds of change should happen. We've spent a lot of time working through with industry representatives a lot of the fine details, much like sub-area planning in some of the industrial areas. that similar level of analysis would happen in other areas. There have been a number of comments about we should get things fixed before we grow. I don't think your parish is ready for a moratorium on growth. I don't think that would be a popular thing to happen. So the challenge is, how do we allow growth to happen and still try and keep up with it? Okay. The comprehensive plan is again attempting to follow the zoning in a general way and provide the broad guidance for where those sorts of uses should happen. And that suggests that if change is going to happen, we're ready for that change to happen. In the meantime, it also outlines the fact that we have to make a lot of improvements. We have to do the sewer system, we have to do a lot of the road improvements, etc. And those are high priority. And the comprehensive plan identifies that. Okay? So we're not ignorant of the fact that, we're not ignoring the fact that that these infrastructure improvements need to take place and that they are significant. I mean, we are on the, as we're told, we're on the cusp of some fairly serious restrictions on growth in the parish if we don't begin to accommodate a better treatment of the effluent that we dump into our roads and ditches. Okay? We cannot continue to pollute the waterways so that they're unsuitable for human contact and continue to grow in that fashion. And we have to do something about it. That's doing nothing really isn't okay. And those aren't your values. I mean, I know a lot of you. You love the things about this parish that are natural. You love the things that are about the parish that are rural. And the plan is attempting to maintain those relationships. Now, we did talk about different densities. We talked about a much lower density here, and we talked about this is now the purple area currently has half-acre lots are allowed. Okay, we talked about proposing 2-acre lots in this area and larger lots even in the other areas. We got a lot of pushback on those areas, and so the issue for the Planning Commission is how to respond to the large amount of public feedback that we've had on those particular issues. It's called rural. It's called rural.
2 houses per acre is what you're saying?
2 acres per house. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 acre. It's.
That's what you said. A half acre.
It's a half acre. It's 2 houses per acre. Now, in the purple.
Right now.
Correct.
What you're proposing.
Yeah, yeah. And you've pushed back, and that's why we're putting it in the hands of the Planning Commission to make a decision. So we've still recognized a lot of that area as rural, but we proposed 1 unit per 2 acres instead of 1 unit per half acre. Okay, that was our recommendation to keep it rural. Now, as you go in and do sub-area planning, you may come in and say, you know, look, in the Santa Maria area, there are just a wide variety of lot sizes. There are 1/4-acre lots, and there are 1/3-acre lots, and there are 10-acre lots, and that's part of the charm of the Santa Maria area. So maybe in Santa Maria, you'd want to develop something that's a little more custom-tailored to the Santa Maria area that didn't say everything has to be at least a half an acre. Maybe you'd want to have more flexibility than say that the minimum lot size is a half acre in that area, because that's not the character of Santa Maria today. So that's what the sub-area planning would hope to achieve. Of course, you would still be bigger. It doesn't mean you have to have, you have 4-acre lots. It's just you got an average, no more than 2 houses per acre. You can still have 10-acre lots. Craig mentioned that we are subsidizing these centers. You know, part of the challenge, and talked about the fact that the market hasn't, and someone else mentioned that, quoted the comment about the market. The fact of the matter is that there are very few totally free markets. All the markets are today affected by the zoning that's out there. That establishes values. That was different before the zoning was put in place. As zoning changes, that affects the marketplace. So everything is a bit of a push and a pull in terms of interacting with the market. The idea, obviously, is to have as little restraint on the market so that the market can be fluid to respond to real market demands. But again, there are other values in the parish. One of the issues that are driving a lot of the thinking about if we double in size, go from 100,000 to 200,000, now this is 20 years from now. Think about the parish 20 years ago, how different it was 20 years ago than it is today. Okay? So 20 years from now, if we happen to double in size, think about what the traffic is going to be. And can we be smarter about how we grow so that we don't generate traffic that requires 6-lane roads everywhere and we lose our rural parish to traffic? Okay? So can we concentrate some growth if it's going to happen? Not necessarily, but if it happens, can it be concentrated and encouraged in some areas so that other areas do remain in fact rural? That's part of the question before y'all. Let me finish, and then you can address your comments to the commission.
But you said 4 acres per medium density.
Excuse me.
The study says 8 to 10. Your comprehensive plan.
In here.
Yeah, but your medium residential is 8 to 10.
Medium residential is this area right here, not the whole area.
8 to 10.
In that area, I just said that this area is 4. The yellow is 4, and this is 8 to 10 in that area.
Medium earlier, maybe you just got confused.
Yeah.
But it is 8 to 10 for medium.
And that's this brown area right here, as I said, just north of Gonzales.
In the 4, will that include existing homes or roads or ponds? Is all that included in the calculation of the 4?
Just the way it is today. These are gross numbers. Okay? It's not after you take out roads and ponds.
Right. You can't include existing subdivisions at all, correct?
Let him finish, okay?
Yeah, it's an overall average of what's there today. So what's there today is 3. Okay? This is the zoning allows 3 units per acre overall. Okay?
In the development. It allows 3 within the development.
Correct.
It can't include anything that's existing. That's what I was asking.
That's true.
With the 4, can you include anything that's existing?
This is not attempting is not a zoning map in the same way, in the sense that one of the objectives of thinking about 4 units per acre is so that we can better plan for roads and sewer infrastructure. So it's an attempt to project ahead and say, okay, if we allow 3 per acre generally in this area, and we have some centers happening at higher densities at crossroads, and we have small little neighborhood centers, and we have a larger center up in Prairieville, the overall average is likely to be 4 is our best guess. Okay, it's a guess. And that then gives us some information about how to plan roads and sewer capacities and other kinds of infrastructure.
So it is a different calculation method. You're proposing in the new method that you include existing subdivisions and existing homes in the calculation of the 4, where that's not allowed in present zoning, where a developer has to come in and it's only within the boundaries of his development.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. No, it's not a big change. This is a comprehensive plan. This is zoning.
You can include existing homes in the calculation of density.
Craig, this is master planning. This is zoning. Zoning applies to each individual property. The master plan says in general how we want to grow. It's a vision document, okay? It is not a zoning document. So they are a very different purpose. They do calculate density differently. This one says on average, because on average they've developed at 3 units per acre in this area. Now there are a lot of them that are a little smaller and many that are still larger lots. The average is intended.
All right.
I'm sorry, I can't argue with you until we go back and do a little planning 101 here. Okay.
Okay.
It is the staff's intent, as I said, to have local meetings. Some of you have asked for, and before the plan is adopted, would be to have local meetings and give people additional opportunity to come in and comment on them. We've mentioned that several times. This is not the first time we've said it, so I feel badly that it hasn't been picked up on before. I think the with regard to impact fees, yes, we recognize that there are legal challenges in impact fees. We also recognize that growth has not been paying its own way, and that may have been perfectly acceptable. Okay, that may have been a conscious decision on the part of the parish, but the fact of the matter is we now have significant traffic problems that have not got a funding source today. And those are catch-up problems. They're not keep-up problems, okay? So we have significant issues here, and so now as a parish we need to decide how we're going to remedy that. Maybe impact fees isn't the right answer. Maybe there are other ways. That's just one of the tools that some communities use, and there are many others. And tax increment financing and other kinds of things are different ways. They're not the same as impact fees, but they are different funding mechanisms that have different implications. And with the final comment is energy efficiency. Good point. We recognize that we do have the International Building Code, and that it has energy efficiency guidelines in it already. And so the master plan is merely is a statement of general values of the community about the importance of energy efficiency, and not attempting to substitute any different regulations.
Thanks. Thank you, Jeff. Questions, comments by commissioners?
Well, I've got, let me turn to the page I need to turn to. Questions concerning the implementation and enforcement. Now, I'm looking at on page 122, section 17200103, enforcement. And I see just one simple little basic statement. Enforcement on comprehensive plan decisions will be done through all reviews and or permitting. I'm sorry, there should be more to that than just one sentence. What are our checks and balances going to be? We've already seen where through, in some cases with the permitting, we've had problems. We've had individuals that have they've gone out and gotten permits to do something that was actually contrary to our ordinances, and the parish said, oh, well, that was our mistake, so we have to let them go ahead and do it. So what are our checks and balances going to be in pertaining to this section? I was looking at, and just above that, item E of section 17-20102. The intention is that on a yearly basis, the Director of Planning will create a work program. The work program outlines which actions are most important to achieve in the following year based on timely priorities and the budget and resources at hand. And what will happen with it then? Does the commission have any say in this? Is the commission going to be part of this process once we kind of get into a checks and balances here? That's also on 122 of 130. So I think there's still some questions I have also pertaining to in one case I see where the commission comes in, another case where the parish council comes in, and then another case where we've got just the parish. Who is the parish? Oftentimes we've had, we say the administration. And a lot of us, I think somebody says the administration, the first person I think of is the parish president. But there are more individuals that make up the administration than just the parish president. So when you say the parish, who exactly are we talking about is the parish? I think that sections 17-20100 on page 121 through section 17-20105 on page 123 need to be worked on a little bit. There needs to be some further clarification, because when it comes time to implement this plan, who is going to be responsible for what? You can't just say, well, so-and-so is supposed to be responsible, and but then someplace else you got it where somebody totally different is responsible. That's one of the big problems that we've had, I found in the past. Who is going to be responsible for administration of these documents? Because too many times the commission has had questions with developments, other issues, and then we were told, oh, that's not your jurisdiction, that's not your responsibility. So we need to start specifically who is going to be in charge of this. Make it very clear so that the general public will understand. Mr. Domain brought up another issue this evening pertaining to was on the dealing with the energy. I can't remember what page exactly that's on. Which I've got some concerns pertaining to that. The market and people's electric bills and how much they have to spend on gas for their vehicles and things like that, their pocketbooks are going to determine how energy efficient they're going to be. The parish doesn't need to do that. We don't need that. I don't really see where we need that section in here. The parish parish government does not need to come up with funding to provide training for energy-oriented jobs. That's not the responsibility of local government. So that's definitely one that I think that I don't think it needs to be revised. I think it needs to be removed. Take it out. Because what you're going to do is you're going to tell people and try, and as Mr. Domain pointed out, there's already a code in place. So if we already have some established standards out there, if the builders are already, and then technology in itself is providing more energy efficient products. So why do we have to watch that? I should have marked more pages than I had. We have a section in here on endangered species. We have state and federal agencies, and don't misunderstand. I'm for protecting endangered species, but I don't see us in Ascension Parish being responsible for protecting endangered species on a local level. Not when you have state and federal agencies to regulate that. That's another section I think that needs to be removed, especially since there was no substantiation. You want to include it, but when was the last sighting? Where was the last sighting? How many sightings have there been? We got none of that. It's easy enough to say that somebody spotted a manatee and it could have been a piece of driftwood. That's the only sections I'm going to discuss. I'm going to bring up tonight. But those sections need to be the two sections for sure need to be omitted. They just need to be taken out of the plan. And the enforcement, application and enforcement and so forth, that needs to be majorly revised. And if you can't get it, and if you can't revise it, you can't clarify it, then you can take it out too. That's concerns I've got.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Well,
Howard.
to kind of mirror some of the things you said, under the section for administration, implementation, and enforcement, I think this is worthy of reading so that everyone clearly understands it. Under section 17-20101 administration, item A, document ownership. per Louisiana state statutes, the comprehensive plan is the land use decision tool for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Technically, it is the Planning and Zoning Commission's document, but in Ascension Parish, the document is honored during land use and development decisions made by the parish council. Now, I'd like to stress to people that 90% of what the Zoning and Planning Commission does gets reviewed by the parish councilmen who are our elected representatives. Now, in some recent cases, people talking about PUDs, we've approved a PUD that had a specific amount of density. It goes before the parish council, and those folks being elected officials, they've seen fit to increase that density some 20-25% in some cases. That's called the elected process. We can make our best recommendations in a land use document or anything else, but we're not an enforcement agency. Our elected officials are the ones that implement things. And I think that needs to be made abundantly clear. This land use document is a plan to say, we're behind the power curve. We're behind the power curve with roads. We're behind the power curve with sewers. We're behind the power curve with water. In many ways, Ascension Parish is behind the power curve. And that happened because 20 years ago, there was no planning. Well, at some point in time, you're either going to have chaos or you've got to bite the bullet and say, how are we going to try, and note I'm saying try, to get this under control? It starts with trying to have some sort of comprehensive plan to say, this is an ideal world, this is what we'd like to see happen. Then also you have the reality coming in and say, this is what's really going to happen, which is driven by a myriad of forces we can't control. Existing state statutes, financial considerations, development considerations. Do people want to sell their land? Do they not want to sell their land? And I would remind everybody that if a land user doesn't sell his land, a developer cannot develop it. But this is a free country, and we do allow people to sell their land. So this is not a simple question. I've heard a lot of people say they're concerned about what this document's going to do to Ascension Parish. This document, however flawed it may be, and the flaws it may have, is only going to help Ascension Parish for the future. That a lot of damage has been done to Ascension Parish because we didn't have some kind of plan. So there's some things that need to come out of here, and I think this enforcement thing needs to come out as well, because the Zoning and Planning Commissioners are not an enforcement body. That enforcement resides at a higher level of parish government, and it starts with our parish councilmen, because they're the ones that are answerable directly to the population of Ascension Parish. Having said all that, I'll get off my civics lecture. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Howard. Any other comments? Anyone?
Along with some of the comments that Hal made, I forgot who exactly said this, but I think the most important thing is that status quo is not an option. We really need to come up with a set of goals and objectives so that we can move forward and have a better lifestyle and preserve the lifestyle that we have here, that we all, those of you that were born and raised here and those of us that are fortunate enough to end up here, can continue to enjoy for our kids and what have you. Does the document need some tweaking? Absolutely. The endangered species provision. I personally think it's an important goal and objective to state that Ascension Parish supports and endorses the preservation of endangered species and wetlands. That's as far as I think it should go. We're not in the business of counting toads and salamanders or anything else, but I think we should endorse the principle that sensitive lands and endangered species should be protected. And that should be a goal. That's all it is. It's a goal. That doesn't mean that there's going to be a staff or an ordinance, that says, hey, count the toads before you take the tree down. I'm struggling with the issue on affordable housing. as I read it, there's portions of the document that clearly should be eliminated. I don't think Ascension Parish is in a position today where affordable housing is a problem that we're faced with. However, someday in the future that may be a problem. And I think it's interesting that we not only take all the different stages of life, whether we are a first home buyer or a retiree, but we also take into account the socioeconomic, conditions that we all, go through in life, and that we at least have an objective that should the problem or should there be an issue someday in the future, that the parish should endeavor to come up with a mechanism by which to address the problem, whatever that problem may look like in the future, whatever that mechanism may be proper in the future. But I think that if we're going to have a comprehensive plan, I think it'd be foolish to think that you can just rip out a bunch of pages that deal with an issue as sensitive as it is and not take into account that while the problem may not exist today, it may exist someday in the future. And maybe it is an honorable goal to have. Remember, we're strictly dealing with honorable goals. We're not dealing with mandates and regulations that are going to be a requirement that say thou shalt part your hair from the left rather than the right. So those are two of the things. I mean, I think Mike brought up some very good comments. I think I had redlined some of those provisions there with question marks and said, well, what do we mean by the parish, and what are the steps for enforcing, and exactly who in the parish government is going to be responsible to produce these reports and make sure that we go into a public forum and that those reports get heard in a public process and get reviewed and what have you. And so I think we need to add some clarity there, but it's just a matter of editing and some clarity. Those are my comments.
All right. Rick, have you all taken down a lot of the minutes, I guess, and I think direction-wise, y'all probably got a pretty good handle. You and Brian got a good list to go by. Okay. All right. Councilman Lambert and Ballantyne, y'all want to? You want to come to the mic? TV wants to see your face. So. Thank you.
We talked about, it comes from y'all, then it comes to the council. But at that PUD that was approved, they had one guy on this council, on this commission up here, voted against it. I think that was Steve Barrow. So y'all approved that PUD. Then it came to the council, and there was a couple of us voted against it. But I just want to clarify that. A lot of times we're going to take the recommendation that this commission comes to us with because y'all doing all the legwork on it. But in this case, I seen different and voted the opposite way.
And that was my point.
And the same thing as this plan. This plan is just a plan, but overall it's coming back to the council for approval. But then it gets into the politics, and that's what a lot of these people are scared of. And I can see their point.
Well, the one thing I think we need to remember, our system may be imperfect, our system of government, but it's better than anything else I've come across anywhere in the world. And yes, it's got its flaws. It certainly does. But by the same token, I think that's why the zoning and planning commissioners are appointed, because we try to stay out of the politics. We try to look at the brass nuts of what we think will and won't work. And then at their level, that's why they get the big bucks and have to take the heat from the public, because that's their job. They review what we do.
Exactly.
So we can recommend and propose.
And 90% of the time, I'll go with y'all, because y'all do a lot of the legwork on it, and I'll go with planning zoning's recommendation. But in this case, I seen the people, all in opposition with it, so we had to go opposite, But it was only a couple of us did that, and that's what's going to happen with this whole plan. It's going to come to us individually broken down, and have to go that route. So something we need to look at hard and make the best decision.
Thank you.
All right.
George, anything?
I guess the only comment I would like to make is we're the legislators, and we don't enforce. Essentially, that is the basis of what we've actually created. Was we have a code of people that enforce the code, and we've set up a court system that will take care of it, which we haven't had before. So I mean, if Mr. Dalton puts up a fence in a servitude across a drainage, even though his neighbor calls me, I can't go out there and tell him, he's breaking the law. That's the we have people that would do that, and of course it's administration that would bring it to the point that it has to be corrected, and they do that all the time. I mean, Mr. Crompton deals with a lot of that situation in our drainage department, where people essentially will take something on their own to do something, and it gets reported. So I mean, that's the basis of what we do. But I encourage and continue to encourage you guys to keep researching this document and try to bring something that is going to be applicable for the parish. It's a good discussion, and I think it's needed.
Thank you. It is a good discussion, and we appreciate all the comments. And on that end, I think Ricky probably can set up some meetings. I know we've talked about that within some of the districts. I don't know if you have a schedule. You want to comment on that?
No, we have nothing. The final draft, when it is prepared, we will set up a schedule.
Okay.
We don't want to get out there with this preliminary draft until the thing is finalized. We've gotten all your comments addressed into it, and we have a document that we can take out to the public that they can read or have read and then come to us and talk about. So when we have the final draft prepared, we'll set up all those meetings.
Okay. All right. To that end, is the final draft going to be prepared for the July 19th meeting? Is that what the schedule dictates, or are you going to go till
I believe it's in August.
August, okay. So the meeting on the 19th, July 19th, that's just another, I guess, workshop. What format?
The 19th is if you needed to have another special workshop on this draft document, I would suggest meeting on July 19th. But if you want to go ahead and set a hearing on a draft, or if you want to, I think we have enough information to finish the draft, or Winston does, and if there's no more direction or discussion on this draft, we could probably set it for either in August or even July. And I think that's what the purpose of this is: have discussion on what's the next step the commission wants us to make.
Well, it seems to me that if we're going to go out to the community, right, then I think that we need to take the comments that we've gotten from the public and the comments that you've gotten from us, and produce the next version of this document. And I think that before the planning commission, before we hold public hearings at the planning commission, let's go ahead and knock out the neighborhood meetings, and then come back to the planning commission, and so that we don't put the public out any more than than need be. I mean, let's just go ahead and revise this document, and let's get it out to the public. Go out, do the neighborhood meetings, and then come back and make another rash of revisions if need be, and then hold the public hearings in the planning commission. That's my recommendation.
I think we need to hold another workshop meeting, because I believe that there are a couple of issues that we really haven't discussed, and they need to be discussed. And that is the transportation and the parish-wide sewer. And those issues, we need to have some focused discussion on that, because we're talking about two major things that are really going to affect the people in this parish. And they are, and it's here in this master plan. And if this is the goals that we're wanting to set, then I think that we need to discuss these items.
Well, now, on the sewer, you've already got a master plan that has been developed. I mean, so
if we're just incorporating what's been adopted.
Well, we definitely need it on transportation.
Well, and I think the parish is working to that end too. But
the thing, it's still, we still need to. I think we need to touch on it. I don't think that it should just be overlooked.
If we want to have that July workshop meeting to cover sewer and transportation, then that just pushes back the final draft another month, which is
Right.
it's fine. That is a perfectly reasonable way to do this. We're not going to prepare the final draft until we finish these workshops.
Let me ask you a question.
I agree.
I mean, wouldn't you want to talk about transportation more at the local level? Because, the way I see it, Ascension Parish, I mean, the transportation issues, where, I apologize, Teresa, where Teresa and I live are going to be slightly different than the problems that they have in some areas up in Perryville. So wouldn't you want to touch base with those on the local level rather than and then go out? Because we're going to hear things in one neighborhood that are going to be slightly different from other neighborhoods. So I think it's logical that we would incorporate the revisions and go out, and then I think once we do the neighborhoods, we're going to have yet another rash of revisions, because I foresee people coming out and giving us additional comments on the next document we produce anyway.
I don't know. I think we've gotten some real good comments on what we've covered so far, and if we fail to talk about transportation in depth, and I agree on the sewer thing, that is rolling along pretty good, and I don't think we need to talk any more about it, but transportation is one of those things that has been overlooked for many years. And
Is there a reason we can't talk about it right now? Is there a reason why we can't talk about it right now instead of waiting a month?
Who has it? You got.
I wasn't actually. We can't unless we go ahead and amend the agenda. It wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't advertised to speak about, and you've already allowed the general public to comment on the items that we were speaking about, and I'm sure that and they may not be prepared. So, no, legally, I don't think we can. Now, of course, I'm not a lawyer, but our legal counsel can probably go ahead and settle that.
Let's ask our resident lawyer about that.
Let me ask you something, Mr. I'm sorry. Mr. Compton, let me ask you a quick question. Why can't we discuss it on the neighborhood meetings?
I think that our concern up here is let's just hear the issues so that we can understand where we are. Is it a neighborhood issue? Is it a regional issue? Because, once again, I haven't heard any of the concerns. The reasons why it wasn't listed in the agenda is because it wasn't a concern that we've heard from the public other than we need to solve our road issues. And as you know, once again, I need to get our legal opinion, but I think that there was an item that was open for other subjects by commissioners. That's sort of what we were leaving it for you guys to bring up the other items that you had concerns over.
Well, in the one comment that I've heard from the public, it's got a lot to do with interconnectivity.
Right.
That's one comment that I've heard a lot of. And that is a transportation issue, and that's certainly something that, it's going to be, it's almost while it may be a parish-wide issue, I see it as a very local issue in some places.
But I think we still have to treat it as a parish-wide issue, though. I mean, I live just off Roddy Road, and that's a issue for me. But I have concerns about Perkins Road and Swamp Road and Stringer Bridge Road, Cornerview, and I'm not that narrow-minded that I can't address other areas of the parish. And I think that, if we narrow it too much, we won't get enough good ideas from the different interested parties. And we seem to be gaining a little steam on getting more participation in local from the residents. So I'd like to see a parish-wide discussion on it, and if it boils down to we need to have specific smaller shops, and so be it. Then we'll do that. But let's start off with the big picture, and there may not be a problem at all. But let's find out. Let's let people talk.
On the subject of transportation, there's two issues here. Well, they all involve roads, but there's two types of roads that we have to address. We've got the state roads that we don't control.
Can't do a thing.
Well, we can try to influence them, but we don't control those roads. So that's one type of roadway. The other type of roadway is the parish roads that we can and do control. I say we, meaning that collectively the parish council controls it. So I think generally we all agree, and I think everybody in this room will agree, that we have bad roads and we need to fix them in a global situation. As much as a proponent as I am for discussion and input, I don't see where we're going to learn a whole lot from people coming up and spending a couple hours here, people saying, my road's bad, I need to get it fixed. I mean, that's just the bottom line that I think everybody's going to say. So what are we going to gain by having another session just to talk about, have people say our roads are bad? I mean, we know that, but they need to be fixed. But there's some we can directly control and some we can't. In both cases, they all require funding.
Well, what do we have to lose by listening to some, and maybe no one will show up for it, I don't know, but, what do we have to lose?
Nothing, but do we have anything to gain is my question. Is it effective use of our and the public's time and the staff's time? I don't know what the answer to that is, but if people could show up or not.
If I may, I think that, part of the process is it's an exchange of principles and ideas, and I think that it's as much what we may or may not learn from them as much as what they may or may not learn from us as well. There's the way I look at it. We have a right-of-way issue, we have a pavement width issue, we have a gross lack of funds issue, which really is the Achilles heel of it. If anything, one of the important topics I see in transportation is, does anybody out there have any ideas of how the parish can generate new sources of dollars that could be dedicated to doing nothing but road improvements so that we can solve some of the transportation problems? I don't know. Maybe somebody can come up with something.
Yeah, get hold of it.
But that's a subject that needs to be, I think, discussed, and it needs to be discussed openly from the public, because as we heard today, there's comments about that the plan implies that there's going to be new sales taxes and that there's going to be these new fees and these new taxes. The plan's simply saying we got to identify sources of funds to pay our way out of the problem, because we don't have the checkbook to pay for it today, and we don't have a foreseeable source of funds to pay for it tomorrow either. So we've got to, if we've identified the problem, we've got to also work together to identify a solution. And I think that, that's an important issue. The other comment, like I said earlier, from the public is this interconnectivity issue, and I think it affects a lot of people. There's a public safety issue on it. There's also an impact issue to the community, and I think it's important that we find a balance between those two. Now, I'm of the opinion that we're better off doing it, by going out into the communities and doing it through that process, than to continue to have another meeting like this, and then go back out into the community. I'm glad that we're having this exchange, because it makes people think about it, and hopefully when we go out to the community, they would have had some thought, that would have had exchanges among themselves in their neighborhood, and maybe come up with some positive ideas and some suggestions.
You mentioned one thing about right-of-way that I think I'd like to just elaborate on if I could. Years ago, parish needed to do something to the road. They'd go to a landowner and say, hey, look, we want to make this intersection a little bit wider, da-da-da-da-da. Would you give us the land? And generally the landowner would say, sure. He'd sign a piece of paper and give them that couple hundred feet of land right there. Today, people have learned the value of land, and it's costly. So, assuming that staff takes this transportation issue and goes out to the people, I think that the subject of right-of-way should be something that staff brings forward to educate the public on what's involved, and to explain. People say, well, why can't they just take it? Well, that's called, eminent domain, and that's a lengthy process, and it does nothing but create ill will with the landowners. The other side of that is, if you want to buy the land, then you got to have a funding source. But I think it's important that our citizenry understand what's involved to acquire the necessary land on which to put the roads that we desperately need. I think if the people understand what we're up against, because this is a real catch-22 we've got, and Julio, like you said, maybe somebody will have an idea that others have not thought of. So, whatever. If you want them to go out first, I'll support it. I'll go either way. I just think we need to move along as best we can.
The only benefit, and I agree with Julio, the smaller meetings would be good. The only really big benefit of doing it this way is this is on TV, and the people that can't make it to the meetings, believe it or not, a lot of them do watch it because I've been bombarded with things since the last meeting, and most of these people I wouldn't have thought would have cared one way or the other, but they seem to be watching these things. I guess when it rains and there's no baseball or whatever on TV, they'll end up watching Channel 21. But it stirred up some interest in it, and I think this is the biggest, easiest way to get the word out to the most people is by doing it this way. We probably need to do what Julio said and have the smaller meetings too, but this is still the best way to reach the most people, in my opinion.
Can the meetings be taped and then televised, delayed?
This one. Sure. Tape.
I mean, so if we go out in the community, it can be taped and then broadcast.
Yes, they can.
Yes. Okay. If we can do that, then I think we can address that concern. So long as we have that vision, that the public visibility, that's important.
Yeah. Mr. Lambert?
Yes, right. Ricky might check into it. Back under the last administration, we did a master plan on transportation, pretty much with the engineer department. They picked some of the majority priority roads. Most of them were state highways. And yes, funding is going to be a big issue. I think administration looked at maybe that asset sales tax. That's the only thing that's available out there right now that might be passed by the people via sales tax.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. I know somebody has done a study on roads, and it's there. Right. So I think we need to. You know of the study? Okay.
Yes. In fact, we've consulted that study, and I just want to put it all in perspective that just like when we talked about land use, the comprehensive plan sets broad over context and direction. Then that gets refined through zoning, that gets refined through rezoning if and when those occur. That gets adjusted in the sub-area planning meetings. The same thing is true of transportation, okay? The comprehensive plan looks at things comprehensively, so it's trying to relate land use to transportation, to commercial development, to parks, to floodplains, etc. Then the next step is to update the road master plan. Okay, that's another. Then that looks down in much greater detail, but the general context is established in the comprehensive plan. It goes to the road master plan. Out of the road master plan may come some direction that is going to come back up and suggest that we amend the comprehensive plan. When they look at it in greater detail, just like the sub-area plans may cause ideas to come forward that would warrant amending the comprehensive plan. So. It's a kind of a back and forth. The comprehensive plan is not intended to be the road master plan, but to set a big picture and relate it to land use. Okay, right. If you change the land use, it changes the road plan, and vice versa. And so it's an attempt to put it all together and correlate the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 items. Mm-hmm. So what you see in the comprehensive plan is fairly general. But it does set direction. It does identify some of the key corridors that need to be connected, and those would be studied in greater detail in a road master plan. The road master plan may throw some of those out and say, this one's really not feasible. When we get down on the ground and look at it, there's too many properties that need to be acquired or whatever, and that our best choice is, in fact, to widen the roads rather than improve parallel roads. Those are things that then come back and change the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I don't think our task is to just decide what the road improvement plan is going to be for the future. I think just, like you say, identify the
and thank you, because that's exactly goes to the point of why I think our best move, and actually in the best interest of the public, is that we get the document revised, go out to the communities, meet with them, and then come back and then hold public hearings. And I think if those meetings can be televised and then broadcast, then I think that's in the best picture. 'Cause we're not coming up with a finite plan here by any stretch of the imagination. As you
No,
said.
but it would be very helpful to us. Some of you have raised some issues. It would be very helpful to know what those concerns are, so that as we come back to you with a document, we can maybe anticipate some of your concerns, or if you have a question that something needs to be looked at in greater detail, we'd be happy to do that if we know what it is. And when we come back, we want to bring our traffic consultant with us. That would be helpful to know what questions he needs to answer, or whether they're of a different nature. So the more we can learn tonight about what your concerns are, that would be very helpful to us.
Okay.
My thoughts was that by holding one more public workshop meeting and it pertaining to transportation, that it might spark some more productive discussion when you go into when we finally do go into these these different communities. We may resolve some issues having it, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't agree with leaving issues like this off of not holding a workshop meeting among the commission for issues like this.
Okay. Let me see. Hang on, Julio. Mr. Valentine, you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to comment on the transportation issues, and Julio is probably right about especially going into the communities, and I think we ought to be done in the afternoons, late in the afternoon, so people can attend. Naturally, that would be the first thought. But then the connectivity the gentleman spoke about, I think it was pointed out at the last meeting. I mean, there's several within proximity of the district where I live, but you're going through big pieces of property. Essentially, who's going to build that road? Are you improving the value of these people's property that you're sending in? I mean, if they want to sell their property to be developed, it's the developer that needs to build the roads. The parish essentially has to take it over. I understand connectivity, but for the parish to go around and start building roads is very difficult. I think you're going to find out on transportation-wise, most people have complaints of the major state roads, which is the legislative body. I mean, they're the guys. I mean, right now, I mean, we with some encouragement from administration and parish president's office and looking at situation, we're going to improve Highway 73 all the way from the interstate all the way to 61 with 3-lane. It's not the best, but it's what we got now. I mean, it's already 3-laned, and it serves its purpose at the present time. Still gets congested, but it's better than having a 2-lane. So that's on a state level, and that's what you're going to find most of the people are complaining about. Roddy Road is an example. That's a parish road. We've been working on it since 1999, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, we haven't, only because of a death in a situation where it became the focus, we ended up with the end of it, and it cost $1 million. So, I mean, it's very difficult. We still haven't bought all the right-of-way. We're giving people over $100,000 to take in 2 and 3 foot of highway, encroaching upon they're still living in their house. They're not moving, but yet we ended up paying over $100,000. I mean, buying people, and look, it's people's property. I understand that. But, it costs money to widen the road. And we've been trying to do this for 10 years. So it's not an easy solution, that's for sure. But I encourage the community-based meetings, because I think you'll pay some more dividends to some people coming out and talking.
I think it's important for people to understand, going on with what Councilman Valentine just said. Roddy Road's a good example. There's intersections at Roddy Road where the landowners around there own to the middle of the road. They actually own the land. Now, you can keep the road there because there's a unique statute here in Louisiana that says you can maintain what you've got. But there was no right-of-way ever given or taken for the roads. It was just there. It was probably a cow path. Who knows? It just got started somewhere along the way a long time ago. Airline Highway's got a tremendous right-of-way on both sides. And that was put in place when the state put the road in, because somebody at some point in time was planning ahead. With the parish roads, that didn't happen for lots of reasons. Now, some of the newer parish roads that are being developed and whatnot, there's criteria of how wide they must be, what the right-of-way must be, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody that wants to develop a piece of land becomes painfully aware of what those requirements are. But that's for new roads. The existing roads are something that we have to live with, and Councilman Valentine is right. I can't argue with people wanting value for their land, but by the same token, the parish is under tremendous pressure to widen the road. And it's a real, I hate to use the word catch-22 again, but it is. And I don't know, we solve that one little bite at a time, and it, again, costs a lot of money. So I think in these village or area meetings, I think it's important for people to understand that the road they're talking about may be a parish road and have a unique set of circumstances that make it very expensive. And are those people, who's going to fund it, are they willing to step up to the plate and pay a half or 1 cent sales tax? I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I do know it's going to require money. And I think people need to understand in each individual case what the road involves, because they're not all the same. The older roads are the hardest because of the where the property lines are. So I would appreciate it when you do these things, you try to have as much information so you could address the local concerns for the local roads that are going to affect that area and what the requirements would be to widen them, just to educate the public a little bit, which is a Herculean task, I recognize, but everybody that starts to get a little bit of it, understands what's going on, will hopefully make it better when it comes time to start appropriating money and justifying taxes and, you know, getting the funds together to start doing this, because we've got to start somewhere. And I think with people understanding the real nature, the detail of the problem is where we need to start.
Rick, from a scheduling perspective, if you wanted any commissioner that had, because we have a couple of commissioners that aren't here, but if you wanted to have comments or suggestions, text edits, if you had them by, let's say, the 30th of the month, okay, no later than COB on June the 30th. When, Winston, could you have the document revised and go to public in 30 days, 3 weeks, 30 days? So we publish it on the webpage no later than July 30th, and we start having neighborhood meetings in mid-August?
That depends on whether you all want to have another look at it before it goes public.
I would recommend that we just go to the public and get comments and be done with it. I mean, I'd like to see it, but I'm going to read it and then I'm going to go listen to the public, and then I'll, if I need to make more comments.
You'd be sure we've caught your concerns.
Right.
And so our thought was to come back one more time to you before that happened.
Right.
How much time are you got? You're just going to offer 2 weeks for the public to get this document to review it, this revised document.
The revision will go out, be published on the internet, right? And then I said that they start scheduling neighborhood meetings.
Middle of August.
2-3 weeks.
Okay, July 3rd. If he gets it out by July 30th, we're talking about 2 weeks.
All right, third week in August, something like that, so that and we start having neighborhood meetings. How's that sound?
Do we have a time limit to where we have to get this ready? Or we can go on and on and on as long as need be?
Well, kind of, sort of, but not really. How's that sound? Does that sound okay?
If you guys do not want to review the final draft before we go public, then yes, the week of August 23rd would be probably when we started scheduling those meetings, which would essentially give 3 full weeks for any public to review that final draft and for us to get out and schedule all those meetings and the locations and do all that. Which would then mean that, I guess, the following month in September, which would probably be September 13th or 20th, we would meet back here with the synopsis of those meetings, and then for you guys to review the final draft, I guess via a workshop, to set a public hearing in October.
Okay, sounds like plenty of time.
If possible, it would be nice to be able to review it before to go, even if it's a day or two.
Before it goes where?
Before it goes to the public.
Well, you'll have it 3 weeks before.
Yeah.
We'll be 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
July 30th will be when we're expecting it back, if not before.
Right.
And start scheduling those meetings the week of the 23rd.
Now, Counselor, do you need that, since this is a meeting, do you need that in the form of a motion?
Okay.
Hey, Ricky, can you repeat it for me?
Hang on, let me see if Councilman Lambert has one.
Yeah, right before we get to this final document, I think all the changes, we've been talking about dropping this, dropping that. I think we need to state all these changes where we can see them instead of, in the document itself. It needs to be there also, but all the changes, if y'all could put them on a separate page where the public can see it and see what changes took place in this document, it would be a whole lot easier to look at.
In the form of a summary?
Correct.
Okay.
So I would recommend that if y'all could.
Mr. Chairman.
Because y'all talked about dropping quite a few things out of it, and, it would be a whole lot easier to read this document, if you look at the changes first and then
Summary
come back.
Well, I'm going to assume that, of course, it can be red line if it's being omitted, if you can have a red line through it, or if it's added, be a blue line, and do both of them that way.
Yeah.
Good track changes.
That would be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I went to ask a question a while ago and was silenced, but everybody else got to ask their question and comment.
When?
That was a while ago. He asked me to wait.
Okay.
And so I have been waiting patiently.
All right, respond.
I keep hearing that you want the public involved. The public is here. We are representing many people, not just ourselves. I have 5 brothers and a sister. They have spouses. I have 23 first cousins. They have spouses. I represent a lot of people here today, and I have a lot of friends. My problem with this is that you're not giving the people that are here, that are making themselves knowledgeable, the appropriate time to speak. You're the chairman. We don't have to go by this three-minute rule that the council set for themselves. You're a separate body. You can choose to do away with the rules and give people more opportunity. Ms. Lee tried to speak for somebody else, and you silenced her when she had her mother-in-law here. What you need to do, if you want the public here, is to let the public that is here representing the people out there, because they are watching. The one time I spoke at this meeting, everywhere I'd go, Walmart, Piccadilly, wherever. Oh, I saw you on TV. You did a good job, or whatever. They're watching and they're listening because they know we're representing them. We are the public. You guys are not really paying attention to us. Well, I'm just saying. Well, you're not giving us the opportunity.
Well, we're going to go out for public meetings.
Why go out to more public meetings when you don't allow the public that's here more opportunity
Most of
to
these
get?
people have said the same thing for 3 meetings, and that's multiple times.
Well, I haven't been here for 3 meetings, and I haven't said anything, and I've lived 63 years in this parish, and this is not a good plan.
All right, you have a motion.
All right, so here goes. Here's a motion. Commissioners will get all any text changes or recommendations to staff by June the 30th. No later than July 30th, a revised master plan with a summary of the changes and possibly in red line if it's manageable will be published to the public. And then approximately 3 weeks after that, the week of August 23rd, you said, Ricky, we would begin neighborhood public meetings and then come back at that time, come back to Planning Commission, schedule for public hearings at the Planning Commission level to incorporate any comments and or changes or recommendations that come out of those additional public hearings.
In September.
In September.
Mr. Dumas, it would help us as staff if you could also direct how many, which areas, and evenings or days, or if there's any more specifics you'd like to give in direction. 10 meetings, 3 meetings, Santa Ma, Prairieville, Dutchtowns, as much direction as possible would be appreciated.
I think, and I'm gonna look to to a couple of gentlemen here in the parish, Almiana. I think we absolutely got to have one in the West Bank. I think you probably need to have, geographically speaking, I think you need to have a couple of them south of Interstate 10. And you probably need to have 3 of them north of Interstate 10. Now, how you break it up locally in the parish, I don't know.
What about at least?
Well, the only trouble is what I was looking through some minutes back from 2008, and I was also looking at some of the commission tapes. And Alan, I talked to you about this last month. I got you on tape talking with Ricky about having a town hall meeting in each district. Julio, I've got you. You're in the minutes saying the same thing. So I think
do one in every district then.
Right now, let's try and look at each one, each council district.
Yeah, do one in every district. That's my.
Now, if the councilmen want to get together, I mean that's their prerogative. Let them.
Yeah.
I don't know, but.
Oh, yes, and it would be at 6 p.m. All of them.
Young people feed their families, their children, so really in the summer, 7 is really a decent number. This was very long. This is very long.
Well, get to 7, then it'd be 9:30 right now. So it's kind of late in the evening.
Are we worth it? Do you want public input?
We love public input.
Well, 7 will get you more people, I can tell you.
How about if we compromise and make it 6:30? 6:30.
Yeah, anything's better. It's just people get home from work, they don't have time to get there.
Starting at 6:30 in the evening. That's my motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay.
And for the record, these are drop-in sessions. This will not be a formal presentation. This will not be where I'm standing up there with 4,000 slides and a PowerPoint show. We're going to be sitting down with copies of the master plan, taking comments, taking questions and concerns, and documenting all of that.
And hopefully having an interaction with the
Yes.
public, yes.
And we'll film it.
You don't have to have a little presentation. A public meeting, people can't come and just walk in and you think they're going to do it. You got to have a little something. You've got to give them an overall, like Joe Winston does, overall something, 10 minutes. You can't just have it and say
Part of what we seem to be criticized for is not listening to the public. So I think we would like to have the public come in and tell us what's wrong, give us as much comment as well.
People are going to read 130 pages. We hear. But if you give a presentation of a basic what's being proposed, they will speak to you about what they want and what their concerns are in their community. They're not going to read that 130-page document.
You know,
one-on-one. They're not going to do it. That's not reality.
Do we have a presentation that's in the can?
If that's not reality, I hope we're not wasting our time going out there, sending out a 130-page document, and no one's going to read it and comment on it.
All right, hang on.
I think from a practical perspective, we can at least discuss the changes from what the plan are, and at least talk to what our perception of what the comments were and what the revisions were made, and focus on the revisions and make sure, because hopefully what we're down to addressing, did we address the concerns well enough? So hopefully we can do that and at least focus on a summary, the summary of changes, and that's our presentation, and talk about the different elements of the comp plan and how we modified them and the things that we did to it. It shouldn't take long to do that.
I don't have a problem presenting. I do it enough. The issue I have is, are the people who say I can't get there till 7 or 7:30 not going to come because they know they're going to miss the presentation? Okay. I sat around for 13 zoning map meetings and no one came.
But that's because you had them all day in the middle of the day when people were working.
Well, let's just not get into that. Let's just move on.
Okay.
There's a motion. It's seconded.
Right. Thank
I'd
you.
like to call
we
a
have,
vote.
We have a motion and seconded to have these meetings. I think as per the minutes, seconded by Commissioner Dalton. Any opposition? Motion carries.
Ricky, one quick question. When you publish this up on the internet, I would assume, but I hate to assume, that you're going to have hard copies printed where people can walk into the office on Church Point Road and pick them up if they don't have access to the internet or something like that.
that would be cost prohibitive to the parish to print hundreds
why I
of
was
copies
asking.
of this document. No,
That's why I was saying,
we
only
will
be
have
available on the
copies in
internet.
our meetings
Okay.
that people can look through, that will be bound in our copies to take with us from meeting to meeting. We're not in the business of printing.
I just wanted to ask.
And
Okay.
we will get a we will get a copy
Yeah,
of
the document,
the meeting schedule, the locations and the times and dates.
Right, when you get all that resolved. Okay. Yes.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Adjourn.
All right. No other comments. We are adjourned.